Caffeine. You take that first sip and almost immediately feel the fog in your brain start to lift. But have you ever wondered what's happening inside your brain? What if I told you that caffeine isn't just waking you up, it's rewiring your brain in ways you never expected? It's no coincidence that caffeine is one of the most widely consumed psychoactive substances on the planet. But how exactly does it work? And how can you enjoy the benefits without suffering the downsides? To answer this, let's start with what caffeine does inside your brain. Caffeine works primarily by blocking the effects of a substance called adenosine. Adenosine is responsible for making you feel tired, as it accumulates in your brain throughout the day, preparing your body for sleep. When you drink coffee, caffeine binds to the adenosine receptors, preventing adenosine from binding, and this makes you feel awake and alert. It also stimulates your brain's reward system. It increases the release of dopamine, the substance that makes you feel pleasure and motivation. This dopamine spike explains why your coffee habit feels so satisfying and why it can become so addictive over time. However, regular caffeine consumption can lead to tolerance. Your brain adjusts to the caffeine by producing more adenosine receptors to maintain balance. As a result, more caffeine is required to block the additional receptors and achieve the same stimulating effect. This is why you might need to increase your caffeine intake over time to feel the same level of alertness. Now, there's actually a way to enjoy caffeine without letting tolerance build up. But before we get into that, let's explore another important impact of caffeine: what it makes you feel. Studies show that moderate caffeine consumption, which is about 2 to 4 cups of coffee, can improve short-term memory, increase alertness, and reduce fatigue. It may even reduce the risk of depression in some individuals thanks to its stimulating effect on the brain. But too much caffeine can have the opposite effect. High doses can cause anxiety, jitteriness, and even panic attacks in susceptible individuals. This is because caffeine increases the release of stress hormones like cortisol, which can elevate anxiety levels and create a feeling of being on edge. Now, caffeine doesn't just make you feel more awake. It can also boost brain performance in the short term. Research has shown that caffeine improves reaction time, attention, and problem-solving skills, making it particularly useful during mentally demanding tasks or periods of sleep deprivation. However, its benefits don't last forever. Once the caffeine wears off, the adenosine is now free to bind to all the receptors it wants. For this reason, you might experience a crash, which is basically fatigue, irritability, and difficulty concentrating. This is why you might find yourself reaching for another cup by mid-afternoon. But wouldn't that interfere with your sleep? Well, the short answer is yes. Caffeine can interfere with your ability to get quality sleep if consumed too late in the day. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 hours, meaning half of it is still in your system 5 hours after you drink it. So, if you have a coffee at 3 p.m., then by 8 p.m., half the caffeine is still in your brain, potentially preventing you from falling asleep. Even if you manage to fall asleep, caffeine can reduce the amount of deep sleep you get, leading to a less restful night. To get the most out of your caffeine habit without experiencing negative side effects, here are a few tips. Know your limits. Most experts agree that up to 400 milligrams of caffeine per day is safe for most adults. This is equivalent to about 4 cups of brewed coffee. Time your coffee. Try to avoid drinking caffeine after 2 p.m. to prevent it from interfering with your sleep. Listen to your body. If you start feeling jittery, anxious, or experience trouble sleeping, it might be time to cut back. And now for the final question: how do you avoid caffeine tolerance? It's pretty simple actually. You need to cycle your caffeine intake. By periodically taking breaks or reducing your consumption, you basically prevent your brain from adapting to constant caffeine exposure. This helps you maintain the same energizing effects without having to increase your dosage over time. You can just have caffeine-free days each week, giving your brain the downtime it needs to recover from constant adenosine blocking. So, is there any long-term effects of caffeine? Research suggests that regular coffee drinkers have a lower risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases. Caffeine's antioxidant properties, along with its ability to block adenosine receptors, may play a protective role in brain health as we age.